I was the lawyer in a case where a professor slept with her student, but the husband's revenge was what shocked me. I've been practicing family law for 17 years. In that time, I've handled somewhere north of 400 divorce cases. I've seen couples throw plates at each other in my conference room. I've watched grown men sob over custody arrangements. I've had clients try to hide assets in their cousin's dog's name. I've seen vindictive, I've seen messy, I've seen straight up delusional. But there's one case file that I still think about. I've anonymized it in my records as Dalton v. Mercer for confidentiality, but the details are burned into my memory. Not because it was the nastiest divorce I've handled, it wasn't. Not because it was the most expensive, I've dealt with bigger estates. It's because of the husband. His real name was Caleb Mercer. Mid-40s, clinical neuroscientist at some private research institute. When he first called to schedule a consultation, his voice was steady, polite. "I need representation for a divorce. How soon can we meet?" Most people calling to divorce their spouse sound like they're barely holding it together. Caleb sounded like he was scheduling a dental cleaning. He walked into my office on a Tuesday morning. Charcoal suit, perfectly tailored. No wedding ring, he'd already taken it off. He shook my hand, sat down, and placed 3 binders on my desk. 3 binders. "Thank you for meeting with me on short notice," he said. "I want to divorce my wife. Her name is Lila Mercer. She's a literature professor at the State University. We've been married 14 years. I grabbed my legal pad, ready to start taking notes. "What's the reason for the divorce?" "Infidelity," he said it the way someone might say Tuesday. No emotion. Just fact. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, going into my standard empathetic lawyer mode. "I know this must be. I have documentation," he interrupted. Not rudely, just efficiently. He slid the first binder across my desk. "This contains a complete timeline of the affair. 8 months, start to finish. Communications, hotel receipts, financial records showing expenditures from our joint account." I opened the binder. It was organized with tab sections. Chronological order. Each piece of evidence labeled, dated, cross-referenced. Most clients come to me with suspicions, maybe a few screenshots of texts. This guy had built a prosecutorial case file. "The affair is with one of her graduate students," Caleb continued. "His name is Damian Harper. 26 years old, doctoral candidate in her department." He slid the second binder over. "This contains background on him. Academic records, scholarship information, social media activity." I was starting to feel like I was in a briefing, not a consultation. "And this," he said, tapping the third binder, "is our complete financial picture. Assets, debts, income sources. We have a prenuptial agreement with an infidelity clause. I've already reviewed it, it's enforceable." I sat back in my chair. In 17 years, I'd never had a client walk in this prepared. "Mr. Mercer, I have to ask, how long have you known about the affair?" 4 months. 4 months? I couldn't help myself. "And you're just now filing?" "I needed to be thorough," he said simply. "I hired a private investigator immediately after my initial discovery. I wanted irrefutable evidence. I also needed time to understand all my options." "Options?" He met my eyes. His expression wasn't angry or hurt. It was focused. "I don't want to fight, Mr. Bradshaw. I want precision. I want this divorce to be clean, legally sound, and final. I also want to understand what reporting mechanisms exist for ethics violations at the university level." That's when I felt the first twinge of unease. "You want to report her to the university?" "I want to understand my options," he repeated. "She violated university policy. There are rules against faculty-student relationships. I have evidence of grade manipulation, misuse of university resources. I'm simply asking, as a legal matter, what can be reported, and to whom?" Everything he was describing was legal. Morally complicated, maybe. But legal. "I can walk you through that," I said carefully. "But let me be clear, my job is to handle your divorce. What you do with information outside of these proceedings is your choice." "I understand," Caleb said. "I just want to know the boundaries." We spent the next hour going through everything. The prenup was solid. If I could prove infidelity, and I could with his evidence, Lila would be entitled to almost nothing. The financial documentation was meticulous. The affair evidence was airtight. The whole time, Caleb never raised his voice. Never got emotional. Never even looked particularly upset. When we finished, I gave him my standard speech about thinking carefully, about whether he wanted to attempt counseling first, about the emotional toll of divorce. He listened politely, then said, I've already thought carefully. I don't want counseling. I want to proceed. All right, I said. I'll draw up the initial filing. We should be ready to move forward in about 2 weeks. Actually, Caleb said, standing up and buttoning his jacket, I have one more question. If my wife were to be out of the country when papers are served, how would that work? I explained international process serving. He nodded, made a note in his phone, and thanked me. As he walked out of my office, I sat there staring at the 3 binders. Most clients come to me because they need help navigating the worst moment of their lives. They need guidance, support, legal expertise. Caleb Mercer didn't need help. He'd already done the hard part. The investigation, the documentation, the strategy. He didn't come to me seeking justice or closure or even revenge. He came to me because he needed someone to file the paperwork. And that's when I realized, this wasn't someone who'd just discovered his wife's affair. This was someone who'd been planning her destruction for months. Over the next 2 weeks, I reviewed every page of those binders. I've read a lot of evidence in my career. Cell phone records printed from a spouse's online account. Bank statements with suspicious charges highlighted. Maybe a private investigator's report if the client had money to spend. Caleb's documentation was something else entirely. The first binder contained the affair timeline. He'd created a spreadsheet, color-coded, cross-referenced. Every late night Lila claimed to be working on campus was logged with corresponding evidence, her car's GPS data showing her at a hotel instead, credit card receipts for room service, text messages to Damien confirming meetup times. He'd recovered deleted messages using some kind of forensic software. I didn't ask how. Legally, since it was their shared device plan and joint account, it was admissible. But the technical sophistication was unsettling. One entry caught my eye. March 14th. Lila had told Caleb she was attending a faculty dinner. The GPS showed her car at Damien's apartment complex from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Caleb had also noted the Venmo transaction where she'd sent Damien $40 earlier that day with the caption "wine for tonight" and a heart emoji. He documented everything. Not just the affair, the lies around it. The second binder was the financial trail. This is where it got ugly. Caleb had gone through every charge on their joint account for 8 months. He'd categorized them: gifts for Damien, dinners together, hotel rooms, even Venmo transfers. He'd included screenshots of Damien posting Instagram photos of things Lila had bought him: a watch, concert tickets, new headphones. The total came to $15,237. I'd seen spouses drain accounts before. But this was different. Lila wasn't hiding money, she was spending it openly, probably assuming Caleb never checked their statements. He checked everything. The third binder contained information about Damien Harper himself. Academic transcripts showing he'd been a mediocre student until Lila became his advisor, then suddenly straight A's. Course evaluations. His scholarship details: full ride, university funded, contingent on maintaining academic standing and ethical conduct. There was also a copied section of the university's faculty handbook. The relevant passage about faculty-student relationships was highlighted. Strictly prohibited due to inherent power imbalance and potential for coercion or preferential treatment. Caleb had scheduled a follow-up meeting for the Friday before we'd file. When he arrived, I had questions. "The university handbook," I said. "You're planning to report this?" "I'm considering it," he said. "Is it legal?" "Reporting ethics violations to an employer?" "Yes, that's legal. But Mr. Mercer, you need to understand, if you go that route, this stops being just a divorce. You're talking about her career." "I'm aware. Her tenure could be affected. She could lose her position. I understand the consequences." I leaned forward. "Help me understand what you want here. Do you want your marriage over? Because we can accomplish that easily. Do you want financial compensation for what she spent? The prenup and this evidence gets you that. Or do you want accountability?" he said. "She violated university policy. She manipulated grades for someone she was sleeping with. She used research funds improperly." He slid another document across my desk, expense reports showing Lila had charged conference hotel rooms to her university account, the same hotels where she'd met Damien. "These are institutional violations. They should be reported." "By you?" "By someone." I sat back. Technically, he was right. Everything he was describing was reportable. But there was something about the way he said it, calm, methodical, that made my stomach turn. "What about the graduate student scholarship?" I asked. "What about it?" "If you report this, and the university investigates, his funding could be pulled. His scholarship terms require ethical conduct. If he violated those terms, that's between him and the scholarship committee. You've read his scholarship terms? They're publicly available on the university website. Of course they were. We spent another hour mapping out the filing timeline. Caleb mentioned, casually, that Lila was planning a trip to Europe. A sabbatical research trip, he said. She's leaving in 12 days. She'll be gone for 3 weeks. Will you be joining her? No. She said she needs to focus. Needs space to write. He paused. She's going with him. Damien. She doesn't know that I know. How do you know? I saw his flight confirmation. He forwarded it to her email. She forgot to log out of our shared tablet. I thought about asking if he wanted to file before she left or after she returned. But I already knew the answer. If we file while she's overseas, I said slowly, and serve her there, she'll be blindsided. No chance to prepare, to secure her own attorney, to what? Caleb asked. Destroy evidence? Move money? I've already secured everything that matters legally. He wasn't wrong. When does she leave? I asked. 2 weeks from tomorrow. Her flight is at 6 a.m. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Most clients at this stage show something: anger, hurt, satisfaction at the idea of serving papers. Caleb showed nothing. You want me to file the day she leaves, I said. I want you to file when you think it's strategically optimal. Mr. Mercer, Caleb. Caleb, I corrected. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Is this about ending your marriage? Or is this about destroying your wife? He considered the question. Actually considered it, like I'd asked something technical about tax implications. Finally, he said, I'm ending a marriage that she already destroyed. I'm simply ensuring that all relevant parties have accurate information about what occurred. What they do with that information is their decision, not mine. It was the perfect answer. Technically honest. Completely deniable. And absolutely chilling. I'll have the filing ready, I said. We'll serve her in Paris. Caleb stood, shook my hand, and walked to the door. Then he stopped. One more thing, he said. After we file, I'll need recommendations for process servers who handle international delivery. Also, would you happen to know the best way to submit anonymous reports to university ethics boards? I assume there's a formal process. I stared at him. He smiled. Actually smiled. Just curious. For future reference. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a divorce. This was an execution. And I was being asked to load the gun. Lila left for Paris on a Thursday morning. I know because Caleb called me at 9 a.m. She's in the air. Please proceed. I'd already prepared everything. The divorce petition was filed electronically at 9:44 a.m. By noon, I'd coordinated with an international process server. Papers would be delivered to her hotel, the overpriced boutique place near the Sorbonne she'd booked for research purposes. Caleb had provided the hotel information. Of course he had. The server confirmed delivery Saturday afternoon, Paris time. Lila was having lunch at a cafe across the street when she was approached. I got the email confirmation with a photo, Lila at an outdoor table, looking confused as a man in a suit handed her an envelope. Damien was visible in the background of the photo, waiting at the table. My phone started ringing an hour later. First call was from a number I didn't recognize, international area code. I didn't answer. Then came a voicemail. Lila's voice, shaking, Mr. Bradshaw, I don't understand what's happening. There's been some kind of mistake. Can you please call me back? I need to talk to Caleb. Please. 3 more calls. 2 more voicemails, each more desperate than the last. Then my office line rang. My assistant told me there was an attorney on the phone. Lila had found representation already, some colleague's recommendation, a family lawyer based in her city. Mr. Bradshaw, my name is Roger D. I'm calling on behalf of Lila Mercer. I understand you filed divorce proceedings? That's correct. While she's out of the country? Perfectly legal, counselor. Your client was properly served according to international protocols. She'd like to speak with her husband. She says he's not answering her calls. All communication goes through me. That's standard in these proceedings. There was a pause. Mr. Bradshaw, she's distraught. She's willing to discuss terms, to negotiate. We're not interested in negotiation. The prenuptial agreement is clear. The evidence of infidelity is irrefutable. We'll see you in court. I could hear him conferring with someone in the background, presumably Lila. When he came back on, his tone had shifted. Look, is there any way to pause this? Let her come home, let them talk? No. Another pause. What does your client want? A divorce. Full enforcement of the prenup. That's it. That's it? I didn't answer that. Because I knew it wasn't it. But what Caleb was doing outside the divorce proceedings wasn't my business. Technically. We'll be in touch, Dee said, and hung up. What I didn't tell him, what I couldn't tell him, was what else happened that Saturday. I found out later, through channels I probably shouldn't discuss, that the university received an anonymous report that same day. A comprehensive, meticulously documented report detailing Professor Lila Mercer's relationship with graduate student Damian Harper. The report included everything: time-stamped communications, evidence of grade manipulation, proof that Lila had charged personal travel to her university research account when Damian accompanied her to conferences. Even documentation showing she'd listed him as a research assistant on grants he'd done no work for. It was thorough. It was damning. And it was anonymous. The university's ethics board met on Monday. By Tuesday, I heard through academic circles, my wife knows people in that department, that an investigation had been opened. On Wednesday, Damian's scholarship committee received a similar package. His funding was suspended pending review within 48 hours. I didn't ask Caleb if he'd sent those reports. I didn't want to know. But when we spoke on Thursday, a routine check-in about the divorce proceedings, he mentioned, almost as an aside, I understand the university has opened an investigation into Lila's conduct. How did you hear that? It's a small academic community. Word travels. Caleb, I'm simply observing that appropriate institutions are handling matters within their jurisdiction. That's how things should work, don't you think? I wanted to push back. To say something about proportionality, about mercy, about whether this was really necessary. But he was my client. And everything he'd done, everything, was legal. Her attorney keeps calling, I said instead. She wants to settle. Wants to talk. What are they offering? She'll admit everything. She'll take almost nothing. She just wants this to stop. Stop? I think she means the university investigation. That's not within our control, Caleb said simply. The university is conducting its own review based on information they received. We can't influence that. She thinks you can. Then she's mistaken. The following Monday, Lila came back early from Paris. I know because Dee called me, furious. Your client's actions have destroyed a woman's career before any divorce is even finalized. She's lost her research funding, she's under investigation, her graduate student has been forced to withdraw. My client filed for divorce. That's all. If the university is investigating your client, that's between her and her employer. Don't play games with me, Bradshaw. We both know, counselor, I interrupted. I don't appreciate the accusation. My client exercised his legal right to end his marriage. If Professor Mercer violated university policies, that's not our concern. He hung up on me. 2 days later, my assistant buzzed me. Mr. Bradshaw, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment. Who is it? Lila Mercer. I should have said no. Should have told my assistant to send her to her own lawyer. But curiosity got the better of me. She looked terrible. Hair pulled back messily, no makeup, eyes red from crying. She was wearing jeans and a university sweatshirt, nothing like the polished professor I'd seen in photos. Mrs. Mercer, you should really be speaking with your attorney, please. Her voice cracked. I just need 5 minutes. I need to understand what Caleb wants. He wants a divorce. That's not, she stopped, took a breath. The university investigation. The ethics board. They have everything. Every text message, every receipt, things I didn't even know existed. This didn't come from some random complaint. This came from him. I said nothing. I know I deserve the divorce, she continued. I know I ruined our marriage. I'll sign whatever papers he wants. I'll take nothing. But please, can you ask him, can you tell him to stop the university thing? My career is over. They're going to terminate my tenure. I'm going to lose everything. I looked at this woman who'd had the world 3 weeks ago, marriage, tenure track, successful career, and watched her beg. Mrs. Mercer, I said carefully, I can't help you with the university investigation. That's a separate matter. You need to work with your attorney on the divorce, and you need to work with the university on their investigation. But he can stop it. I know he can. If he can't stop what's already in motion. Then tell him I'm sorry. Her voice rose, desperate. Tell him I'll do anything. I'll apologize publicly, please. You have to understand, I'm losing everything. My job, My reputation, my entire life. You should have thought about that before sleeping with your graduate student. The words came out harsher than I intended. But I was tired of this. Tired of watching someone reap consequences they'd planted themselves and then begging for mercy. She stared at me, tears streaming down her face. Please just talk to him, she whispered. I told her I would. I didn't tell her it wouldn't matter. Because I already knew, Caleb Mercer wasn't interested in her apologies. He was interested in watching her world burn. And there was nothing, absolutely nothing, anyone could do to stop it. I called Caleb that evening and told him about Lila's visit. What did she want? He asked. For you to make the university investigation go away. I can't do that. I told her as much. She's desperate, Caleb. She's falling apart. Good. The word hung there. Not angry, not satisfied. Just factual. The hearing is in 6 weeks, I said, changing the subject. Dee is going to push for a settlement. I think we should consider no settlement. I want the hearing. You've already won everything. The prenup gives you the house, the assets. She's agreed to take nothing. Why drag this into court? Because I want it on record. On record for who? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. 3 weeks later, the university's ethics board released their preliminary findings. I got a call from a colleague who teaches there. She'd heard I was representing Caleb and wanted to give me a heads up. They're placing Lila on immediate administrative leave. The evidence is. It's bad, Bradshaw. Really bad. How bad? Grade manipulation, misuse of funds, violation of about 6 different policies. They're talking termination. Her tenure review has been suspended indefinitely. I thanked her and hung up. Then I called Caleb. Have you heard? About the administrative leave? Yes. How did you? Never mind. I didn't want to know how he was getting information from inside the university. This is going to destroy her career. That's unfortunate. Is it? I couldn't help myself. Is it really? She destroyed her own career when she chose to violate university policy. The board is simply responding to the evidence. That word again. Evidence. As if none of this was personal, just a logical chain of cause and effect. Dee called me the next day. He sounded exhausted. My client is willing to settle on any terms. Literally any terms. She'll sign a confession of infidelity, waive all claims to property, agree to any custody arrangements. There are no kids. Agree to anything, if your client will just. Jesus, Bradshaw, can he show some mercy here? What exactly do you want us to do? The university. Can he talk to them? Can he ask them to drop the investigation? The university received an anonymous report. My client has no relationship with the ethics board. He can't influence their investigation. Bees. We both know, counselor, I said firmly. My client wants to proceed to the hearing. That's his right. Why? He's already destroyed her. Her career is over, her reputation is gone, look, between you and me, she's not doing well. Mentally. She's barely functional. I felt a twinge of something. Guilt, maybe. But I pushed it down. The hearing is scheduled. We'll see you there. I hung up and sat at my desk, staring at the case file. Dee was right. Caleb had already won everything that mattered. The divorce was a formality at this point. So why insist on the hearing? The answer came 2 weeks later when I learned what else had fallen apart for Lila. Her book contract, a deal she'd signed 2 years ago for a critical study of Victorian literature, was quietly cancelled. The publisher cited reputational concerns. Conference invitations were rescinded. An academic journal removed her from their editorial board. Colleagues stopped returning her calls. I heard through the academic grapevine that Damien had withdrawn from his program entirely and moved back to his hometown in Ohio. No degree, no prospects, his academic career dead at 26. The scholarship committee had released a statement about maintaining ethical standards and zero tolerance for violations. They'd made an example of him. When I mentioned this to Caleb during a pre-hearing prep call, he simply said, actions have consequences. For both of them, I pointed out. Yes, doesn't that bother you? The kid's life is ruined too. He's 26 years old. That's not a kid. He made choices. Caleb, come on. Lila was his professor. There was a power dynamic. Are you suggesting he had no agency? That he couldn't say no to sleeping with a married woman, accepting gifts purchased with her husband's money, letting her manipulate his grades? I didn't have a good answer for that. The week before the hearing, I reviewed all our evidence one final time. It was overwhelming. Dee would have nothing to work with. Lila's own emails, her financial records, everything pointed to years of deception. Not just the affair. The lies around it. I found myself reading through some of the recovered text messages between Lila and Damien. There were jokes about Caleb. They'd given him a nickname, the robot. Does the robot ever suspect anything? No, he's too busy with his precious research. I could probably bring you home and he wouldn't notice. Maybe we should test that theory. I felt sick reading them. Not because of the affair, I'd seen worse. But because of how casually they'd mocked him. How certain they'd been that he was too oblivious, too focused on his work to ever figure it out. They'd underestimated him completely. The day before the hearing, my phone rang. Dee, we have a problem. What kind of problem? Lila. She's having a breakdown. Full blown. She can't stop crying, she's not sleeping, she's not eating. I'm genuinely concerned she's going to hurt herself. I felt my stomach drop. Has she said anything about? No. Nothing like that. But she's not capable of appearing in court tomorrow. I need to request a postponement. How long? 2 weeks. Maybe a month. She needs time too. I'll talk to my client. I called Caleb immediately and explained the situation. Dee wants to postpone the hearing. He says Lila's having a mental health crisis. Is he requesting a formal psychiatric evaluation? I don't know. He just said she's not capable of appearing. Then she can appear remotely. Or her attorney can represent her. The hearing doesn't require her physical presence. Caleb, the woman is falling apart. And that's unfortunate. But it doesn't change the legal proceedings. Dee is going to formally request a postponement. The judge might grant it. Then we'll oppose it. I rubbed my temples. You want me to argue that a woman who's having a breakdown should be forced into court? I want you to argue that there's no legal basis for delay. The evidence is clear. Her mental state doesn't change the facts of the case. He was right. Technically right. But God, it felt cruel. What if she really does hurt herself? I asked. There was a long pause. Mr. Bradshaw, Caleb said finally, his voice perfectly steady, I'm not responsible for the consequences of her actions. She made choices. Adult choices. Now she's facing the results. If she can't handle that, it's unfortunate, but it's not my problem. That night, Dee officially filed for a postponement, citing his client's mental health. I called Caleb to inform him. What's your recommendation? He asked. Honestly? We could show some compassion here. 2 weeks isn't going to change. No, Caleb said simply. Tomorrow is scheduled. And that's when I realized something truly disturbing. This wasn't about the divorce anymore. This wasn't even about revenge. This was about watching her break. Completely. And Caleb wouldn't stop until she did. The judge denied the postponement. Dee had filed an emergency motion citing Lila's mental state. We'd opposed it, arguing there was no legal basis for delay. The judge reviewed both motions and ruled that the hearing would proceed as scheduled, though he'd allow Lila to appear remotely if necessary. She appeared in person. I wish she hadn't. The courtroom was nearly empty, family court hearings usually are. Just us, Dee, Lila, Caleb, the court reporter, and the judge. Caleb arrived 15 minutes early. Navy suit, pressed white shirt, silver cufflinks. He looked like he was attending a board meeting. He sat at our table, reviewed some notes on his tablet, and waited. Lila arrived right at 9 a.m. with Dee practically holding her up. I barely recognized her. She'd lost weight, maybe 15 pounds she didn't have to lose. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup. She was wearing dress pants and a blouse that looked slept in. Her hands were shaking. Dee guided her to their table. She sat down and immediately looked over at Caleb. He was reading something on his tablet. Didn't even glance up. All rise, the bailiff announced. Judge Morrison was in his 60s, seen everything in his 30 years on the bench. He reviewed the file quickly, then looked up. This is the matter of Mercer v. Mercer. I've reviewed the filings from both parties. Mr. D, I understand your client wishes to address the court? D stood. Your Honor, my client would like to make a statement. She accepts full responsibility for the dissolution of this marriage and wishes to expedite these proceedings. Very well. Lila stood. Her legs were visibly shaking. She looked at the judge, then turned to Caleb. I know this doesn't change anything, she started, her voice barely above a whisper. I know I destroyed our marriage. I know I lied to you for months. Her voice cracked. I'm so sorry, Caleb. I'm so sorry for everything. Caleb still didn't look at her. He was making notes on his tablet. I'll sign whatever you want, Lila continued, tears streaming down her face now. The house, the money, everything. It's all yours. She turned back to the judge. Your Honor, is there any way to? The university investigation, is that something that can be? Mrs. Mercer, Judge Morrison interrupted gently, this court has no jurisdiction over your employer's internal proceedings. We're here to dissolve your marriage, nothing more. But she gestured at Caleb. He can stop it. I know he can. If he would just. Mrs. Mercer, the judge said more firmly. Please sit down. She collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Dee put a hand on her shoulder, then stood. Your Honor, my client accepts all terms outlined in the respondent's filing. We're prepared to sign the settlement agreement as written. The judge looked at me. Mr. Bradshaw? I stood. The petitioner is satisfied with the terms, Your Honor. Very well. Judge Morrison reviewed the settlement one more time. It was brutal in its simplicity. Caleb got the house, the investment accounts, his retirement funds. Lila got her car and her personal belongings. No alimony. The prenup's infidelity clause was enforced to the letter. Before I finalize this, the judge said, I want to make sure both parties understand these terms are final. Mrs. Mercer, you're waiving your right to any marital assets beyond what's listed here. Do you understand? Lila nodded, still crying. I need a verbal response. Yes, she whispered. I understand. Mr. Mercer? Caleb looked up from his tablet for the first time. I understand, Your Honor. The judge signed the order. The marriage of Caleb Mercer and Lila Mercer is hereby dissolved. You're both free to go. It was over. 14 years of marriage, ended in 20 minutes. Caleb stood, buttoned his jacket, and reached for his briefcase. Lila stood too, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Caleb, please, can we talk? Just for 5 minutes? Please. He walked past her without a word. Didn't even make eye contact. Caleb. Her voice rose, desperate. Please. I'm begging you. He kept walking. Pushed through the courtroom doors and disappeared into the hallway. Lila crumpled. Dee caught her before she hit the floor, guiding her back into her chair. She was sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. I grabbed my briefcase and followed Caleb into the hallway. He was standing by the elevator, checking his phone. That was rough, I said. He glanced up. It's done. She's devastated. Yes. Does that bother you at all? He considered this. Should it? The elevator arrived. We stepped in. As the doors closed, I asked, what happens now? Now I move on with my life. And Lila? That's not my concern. We rode down in silence. In the lobby, we shook hands. Professional, brief. Thank you for your work, Mr. Bradshaw. I'll have the final payment sent over this week. Caleb. But he was already walking away, phone to his ear, already moving on to whatever came next. I stood there watching him go and felt something I'd never felt after winning a case. Shame. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my colleague at the university. They finalized it, she said. Lila's tenure has been officially terminated. She's done. On what grounds? Ethics violations, misuse of university resources, failure to maintain professional boundaries. It's all in the report. They're making it public tomorrow. I thought about calling Caleb to let him know. Professional courtesy, he'd want to know the investigation was concluded. I dialed his number. He answered on the second ring. Mr. Bradshaw. The university made their decision. They've terminated Lila's tenure. It'll be public tomorrow. I know. You? No? Yes. I received an email from a colleague this morning. Thank you for the call. How are you? I need to go. Thank you again for your excellent work. He hung up. I sat there holding my phone, staring at it. He already knew. Of course he knew. He probably had sources inside the university. He'd probably known before I did. This had never been about getting information from me. This was about seeing if I'd call. About confirming that even his own lawyer was still thinking about this case, still following the aftermath, about knowing that somewhere, someone was still watching Lila's world burn. And in that moment, I realized something that made my blood run cold. Caleb Mercer hadn't just won. He'd orchestrated a complete annihilation so thorough, so precise, that everyone involved, me included, had become instruments of his revenge. And the most terrifying part? I still didn't know if he was done. 6 months passed. I didn't hear from Caleb Mercer again. The final payment came through exactly when he said it would. No follow-up questions, no requests for additional documentation. The case was closed. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'd hear things through various channels. Academic gossip travels in strange circles, and my wife still had connections at the university. Lila had left town. No forwarding address, no goodbye to colleagues. She just disappeared from campus one day and never came back. Damian Harper never finished his doctorate. Last anyone heard, he was back in Ohio working at his father's hardware store. The university used the case as a cautionary tale during new faculty orientation. They never mentioned Lila by name, but everyone knew who they were talking about. I tried to forget about it. Tried to focus on other cases, other clients. But then, 9 months after the divorce was finalized, I saw her. I was grabbing coffee at a place near my office, one of those chain shops, nothing special. I was in line checking my phone when I heard a voice I recognized. "What size?" I looked up. Lila was behind the counter wearing a green apron and a name tag. She'd aged 10 years and 9 months. Gray streaks in her hair that hadn't been there before. Deep lines around her eyes. She looked tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. Our eyes met. I saw recognition flash across her face, then something else. Shame, maybe. Or just exhaustion. "Medium coffee," I managed. "Black." "Name?" "Warren." She wrote it on the cup with a Sharpie, hand steady despite everything. Passed it down the line to her coworker. I paid, moved to the pickup area, and waited. When my coffee came up, she called out Warren without looking at me. I grabbed the cup and left. In my car, I sat for 10 minutes just staring at the steering wheel. A tenured professor. Published author. Respected academic. Now making minimum wage at a coffee shop. I thought about calling Caleb. Telling him I'd seen her. But what would be the point? To let him know his revenge was complete? To give him one more moment of satisfaction? I didn't call. 3 months later, I ran into Caleb at a medical conference. My wife dragged me to these things occasionally, networking for her career, torture for me. I was at the hotel bar, counting down the minutes until we could leave, when I heard that familiar voice. "Mr. Bradshaw." I turned. Caleb stood there in a perfectly tailored suit, holding a glass of whiskey. He looked exactly the same. No, not exactly, he looked better. More relaxed. Like a weight had been lifted. "Caleb," I said. "Small world." "Indeed." He gestured to the empty bar stool next to me. "May I?" "Sure." We sat in silence for a moment. He sipped his drink. I nursed my beer. "How have you been?" he asked. "Busy. You?" "Good. Very good, actually." Another silence. "I heard you got remarried," I said. My wife had mentioned it, someone from his research institute. "Yes. 4 months ago." He smiled slightly. "It's going well." "That's good. Congratulations." "Thank you." I wanted to ask if his new wife knew the full story. If she understood what he was capable of when crossed. But I didn't. Instead, I asked, "Do you ever think about it? The divorce?" He considered this. "Sometimes. Not often." "Any regrets?" "About the marriage?" "Yes. I chose poorly." "But about how it ended?" He shook his head. "No. You destroyed her life." "I didn't destroy anything," he said calmly. "She violated university policy. The university made their decision. She committed infidelity. The prenup was enforced. She made choices. Institutions responded appropriately to those choices." That's a convenient way to look at it. It's an accurate way to look at it. He turned to face me fully. "Mr. Bradshaw, let me ask you something. If someone lies to you for months, steals from you, mocks you behind your back, should there be consequences?" "Of course." "Then what did I do wrong?" I didn't have an answer. He finished his drink and stood. "It was good seeing you. Please give my regards to your wife." "Caleb," I stopped him. "I saw Lila. A few months ago. She's working at a coffee shop." He looked at me. His expression didn't change. "I hope she's finding some peace." That was it. No satisfaction, no gloating. Just polite indifference. He shook my hand and walked away. I watched him go, then ordered another beer. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't sleep. My wife asked what was wrong. I ran into an old client tonight, I said. The one I told you about. Caleb Mercer. The revenge guy? Yeah. How was he? Happy. Remarried. Successful. Completely fine. Good for him, I guess. Is it though? I turned to face her. He didn't just divorce his wife. He systematically destroyed every aspect of her life. Her career, her reputation, her financial security. Everything. She cheated on him. I know. But the response was legal, my wife interrupted. You said so yourself. He didn't break any laws. He just exposed the truth and let the chips fall. It was calculated. Methodical. Cold. So? Maybe that's better than flying into a rage and doing something stupid. I thought about that. Maybe she was right. Maybe Caleb's approach was better than the alternative. No violence, no illegal activity, no self-destruction. Just documentation, patience, and precision. But it still kept me up at night. Because I'd seen a lot of revenge in my career. I'd seen angry spouses try to hide assets. I'd seen custody battles turn vicious. I'd seen people lie, cheat, and manipulate to hurt their ex-partners. But Caleb Mercer was different. He didn't act in rage. He acted in ice. He didn't destroy in a moment of passion. He dismantled over months of patient work. He didn't make threats or dramatic gestures. He just documented everything, identified every pressure point, and systematically applied force until his target's entire life collapsed. And the scariest part? He made it look inevitable. Like he hadn't destroyed Lila at all, like she'd destroyed herself and he'd simply held up a mirror to show everyone what she'd done. Maybe that was true. Maybe I was overthinking this. But late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I kept coming back to one image. Caleb Mercer standing in the courthouse hallway after the divorce was finalized. Not celebrating. Not emotional. Not relieved. Just checking his phone. Moving on to the next item on his agenda. Like dissolving a 14-year marriage and ending 2 careers was just another task to cross off his list. People think revenge is fire and fury. It's not. Real revenge is patience. It's documentation. It's making someone watch as everything they built crumbles, not from your anger, but from their own choices being exposed to the light. Caleb Mercer didn't destroy Lila's life in a fit of rage. He erased it with precision. And that's what still terrifies me. Not the revenge itself, but the absolute coldness with which it was executed. No shouting. No threats. No violence. Just consequences. Delivered in silence. Edit, for everyone asking if I could have stopped it, legally, no. Everything he did was within the bounds of the law. Could I have refused to represent him? Sure. But someone else would have taken the case. And honestly, he didn't need me. He'd already done all the work. I just filed the paperwork. Would I take the case again if I could go back? I don't know. I really don't. All I know is this: if someone ever wrongs Caleb Mercer again, I pity them. Because he won't yell. He won't threaten. He'll just smile, take notes, and start building a file. And by the time they realize what's happening, it'll already be too late. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you really like our videos, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.